The king of Kung Fu died at the very young age of 32, right in the bed of his adult film actress lover. The media called him an adulterer who abused his virtuous wife, but Linda Lee denied the cruel accusations and said that Bruce was a good husband and father. Betty Ting emerged as the most hated adult film actress of her time because she boldly said in interviews that she loved Bruce despite knowing he was married and had 2 children. Furthermore, she admitted that she had intercourse with Bruce and said that she had not engaged in any intimate activity with him on the day he died. Linda wrote the book, The Only Man I Knew, in memory of her husband, and Betty wrote 7,000 words for her lover entitled, The Best Time with Bruce Lee. Their triangle love was devastating and shocked the world at the time. Born into one of the richest Eurasian families in Hong Kong, Bruce was rejected by Hollywood simply because he had an Asian face and a slight limp. He was the Einstein of martial arts, and his death has been the subject of wild conspiracies, that he was poisoned and drugged by Betty or killed by the Hong Kong mafia. Even his son, Brandon Lee, died on set in a prop accident where he was shot with a real revolver. What did Linda do when she learned her husband had died in his mistress's bed? Why was Bruce Lee's family's fate so tragic? Here's the full story of the Bruce Lee, the controversy of the Kung Fu King. Bruce was born Lee Jun-fan, meaning returner, because his mother felt he would return to America when he grew up. He was born on November 27, 1940, in San Francisco, while his parents were touring with the Hong Kong Opera Company. His birth in America allowed him to claim citizenship through the principle of jus soli. His father, Lee Hoi-chuen, was a prominent Cantonese opera and film actor, while the ethnicity of his mother, Grace Ho, is disputed, with traditional consensus holding that Grace Ho's father was a German immigrant with a Chinese concubine. Grace Ho was born into one of Hong Kong's wealthiest and most powerful clans, the Ho Tungs. She was the half-niece of Sir Robert Ho Tung, the Eurasian patriarch of the clan. As such, young Bruce grew up in a wealthy and privileged environment. Despite his family's advantageous status, the neighborhood in which Lee grew up became overcrowded, dangerous, and rife with gang rivalries due to the influx of refugees fleeing communist China into Hong Kong, then a British colony. When he was 4 months old, Lee's family returned to Hong Kong, but they encountered unexpected hardships due to World War II, when Japan launched a surprise attack on Hong Kong. His family's acting connections led to him appearing in films from an early age. He landed the role of a baby being carried onto the stage in the film Golden Gate Girl. At the age of 7, Lee began practicing Tai Chi with his father. At the age of 9, he starred alongside his father in The Kid, his first leading role. Bruce was restless throughout his life, and his childhood nickname was Never Sit Still, because he couldn't, and he remained that way throughout his life. He was constantly on the move, walking and running around. Unfortunately, the future king of Kung Fu was born with many things going against him. He was skinny, had very poor eyesight, had very bad skin, and he was bullied by his schoolmates because of his limp, which meant one leg was slightly shorter than the other. At the age of 13, Bruce was beaten in a street fight, and it was then that he took up martial arts seriously. As a teenager, his father became addicted to drugs, and this affected Bruce's personality and poor academic performance. He was a student of Kung Fu legend Ip Man, who reportedly initially refused to teach Bruce due to an old Chinese martial arts rule against teaching foreigners, and Bruce had European background on his mother's side. His friend William Chung spoke on his behalf, and Bruce was eventually accepted into the Kung Fu school. In his late teens, Bruce became increasingly involved in fights with a rival martial arts school, Choi Lee Foot. He was involved in a rooftop brawl in which he hit his opponent so hard that one of his teeth was knocked out. The boy's parents reported it to the police, and detectives threatened to imprison Bruce if he ever got involved in another fight. Bruce's mother had to sign a document stating that she would take full responsibility for her son's actions if they released him into her custody. Although his mother did not tell her husband about the incident, believing him to be too unruly, she suggested that he return to the United States to claim his American citizenship at the age of 18. Bruce's father agreed, as Lee's college prospects were not promising if he remained in Hong Kong. Bruce moved to Seattle, where he enrolled at the University of Washington. During this time, he began considering making money by teaching martial arts, although he aspired to a career in acting. He opened his first martial arts school, operated from his home in Seattle. It was here that Bruce eventually met his future wife, Linda Emery, who came from a middle-class family. Born on March 21, 1945, Linda was raised in the drizzly landscape of Everett, Washington, to parents of Swedish, Irish, and English descent. She attended Garfield High School, where she spent her after-school time cheerleading. There, Linda saw interesting visitors from all walks of life coming to inspire the students. Her life changed forever when a young man named Bruce came for a martial arts demonstration. Bruce was still in college, honing his fledgling Jeet Kune Do, a martial arts style that utilizes Wing Chun for its physical aspects and philosophical reflections for its mental shaping. His demonstration at Garfield High School blew Linda away, and she was so captivated by Bruce's intelligence and physical prowess that she became one of his students after graduation. She also enrolled at the University of Washington, where Bruce was attending. "He was dynamic," Linda told CBS News. "From the first time we met, I thought, this guy is amazing." It didn't take long for the young romance to blossom into a lifelong commitment. The same year, Bruce competed in the Long Beach International Karate Championships and performed his iconic one-inch punch. He married Linda on August 17, 1964, at a local church. The couple held a small ceremony with few guests and no photographers, fearing their interracial relationship would be unacceptable. Shortly thereafter, Linda discovered she was pregnant, even though she still had a few credits left before graduation. Linda taught kindergarten to support her husband's career, while Bruce was busy perfecting his martial arts skills. They had 2 children, Brandon Lee and Shannon Lee. Both grew up studying martial arts from an early age, guided by their father's teachings. Bruce's hard work began to pay off when his on-screen skills and charisma landed him a role in the TV series The Green Hornet, where he played the Hornet's sidekick, Kato. However, Bruce's career in America stalled. Green Hornet was canceled, and the lead role Bruce desired in the new Kung Fu series went to Caucasian actor David Carradine. Unfortunately for his Hollywood prospects, no studio wanted a Chinese man for the lead role at the time. Bruce, who felt he deserved the role in Kung Fu, was emotionally devastated. In an interview, Bruce stated that he understood Warner Brothers' attitude toward casting the series. "They thought it was a business risk. I don't blame them." If the situation were reversed, and an American star came to Hong Kong, and I was the one with the money, I would have my own concerns about whether the American would be accepted there. In his quest for physical perfection, Bruce would train relentlessly. He was a Kung Fu fanatic 24 hours a day, perhaps even in his sleep. Bruce Lee was doing extremely heavy weights on his shoulders when he slipped and injured his back. Doctors told Bruce that the injury was so severe that he would never train Kung Fu again. But for a Bruce who was extremely hard on himself, that wasn't enough to stop his ambition. To repair the damage and ease the pain, he took cortisone steroids, and within 6 months, Bruce had defied doctors' predictions and was back in the gym. The accident that Bruce suffered to his back would have been devastating for most people, but not for the highly motivated and independent Bruce, who refused to accept his bad luck and wouldn't let any obstacle stand in his way. Linda said, "It was difficult for him to break into Hollywood as an established actor because of the prejudice against him being Chinese. The studios said that having a Chinese male lead in a film was unacceptable, so Bruce set out to prove them wrong." Bruce moved his wife and 2 young children to Hong Kong so he could begin his film career. Linda said she had difficulty assimilating to Hong Kong culture, but her love for Bruce never wavered. After negotiations with Shaw Brothers Studio, Bruce signed a film contract to star in 2 films produced by Golden Harvest. He played his first leading role in The Big Boss, which proved a huge hit throughout Asia and catapulted him to instant fame in Hong Kong. A year later, he starred in the American-Hong Kong co-productions Fist of Fury, Enter the Dragon, and The Game of Death. His films, produced by Hong Kong and Hollywood partnerships, were commercial successes, elevating martial arts films to new heights of popularity and recognition, and sparking a surge of Western interest in Chinese martial arts. Thanks to Bruce's influence, kung fu films began to replace the wuxia, or more realistically choreographed fight genre. Fantasy elements were discarded in favor of real-world conflicts, and the characterization of the male lead changed from a mere chivalrous hero to someone who embodied ideals of masculinity. In 1972, Bruce, who was with his wife Linda, met Betty Ting Pei at the Hyatt Regency for the first time. Betty Ting Pei was already famous, but Bruce Lee was certainly a bigger name internationally. She was a favorite actress of Zhou Wenhui, the founder of Golden Harvest, and Zhou often went with her to various events. It didn't take long for Bruce and Betty to become friends, and then begin their affair. Betty was born Tong Mei Li in Taipei City on February 19, 1947. She came from a three-generation medical family. Her uncle was Zhang Shuiliang, and her maternal grandfather was Bao Yulin, the chief of police of the Beiping Police Bureau during the warlord era. Betty began her acting career with the Central Motion Picture Corporation. After acting in 7 Taiwanese films, she was spotted by director Shaw Brothers and subsequently decided to use the screen name Ting Pei. Her first film in Hong Kong was The Purple Shell, in which she played a dance host. Although Betty has acted in dramas, comedies, musicals, and martial arts films, she is best known in Asia for her roles as mistresses and numerous steamy bed scenes. She was a regular customer of director Inoue Umetsugu, who directed the musical The Millionaire Chase. Commenting on her relationship with Bruce, Betty said that even though he was married and had children at the time, she was the one who continued the relationship. "The whole world loved him. It would be strange if I didn't love him." According to her, Bruce was attracted to her honesty and straightforward personality. The couple became inseparable, and Betty would accompany him to meetings with producer Raymond Chow, choose his clothes, and even give him haircuts during the filming of The Way of the Dragon. On set, the staff affectionately called her Little Dragon Girl, a nickname for her constant presence at Bruce Lee's side as his mistress. The fact that Betty truly embraced her typical mistress roles translated into real life. She didn't care that Bruce already had Linda and 2 children. She still loved him and refused to part with him. On May 10, 1973, in Hong Kong, 10 weeks before Bruce Lee's death, Bruce was doing voiceover work for Enter the Dragon. The staff said he looked tired, but he refused to rest because he wanted perfection for his film, and that he was very worried about it failing, as it would be his international breakthrough. It was a very hot day when Bruce recorded his voiceover. The technicians turned off the air conditioning to dampen the noise. Bruce was sweating profusely, and without warning, he collapsed and had a seizure. Reports state that he writhed on the floor and sweated profusely for several minutes. Bruce was rushed to Baptist Hospital, just 2 miles away. Doctors struggled to revive him, and he showed all the symptoms of cerebral edema, or swelling of the brain. Doctors administered mannitol, which is intended to reduce pressure. This drug works by dehydrating the body to draw fluid from the brain, thereby reducing swelling. Within an hour of receiving the drug, Bruce regained consciousness. One theory circulated that Bruce suffered from epilepsy, a condition that kills up to 8,000 Americans each year. It involves seizures that cause the heart and lungs to stop, caused by sleep deprivation and stress. When Bruce collapsed in the studio a few weeks before his death, he was clearly stressed and had a seizure, and in fact, it wasn't his first seizure. There are stories of him suffering from epilepsy as a child, but his wife, Linda, denied that her husband had epilepsy. It was July 20th, 1973, at exactly 7 in the evening, 4 hours before Bruce Lee's death. Bruce and his business partner, Raymond Chow, were at the apartment of his mistress, Betty Ting Pei. They were reading the script for the upcoming film, Game of Death, starring Betty. As Bruce read the script with Raymond and Betty, he complained of feeling tired and unwell. He drank 2 cans of soda, but his condition didn't improve. He complained of a headache, so Betty gave him a tablet of the painkiller Equagesic, which he had been taking for anxiety. Equagesic contains aspirin for pain relief and the chemical meprobamate, which treats tension and anxiety. Betty reported that she only gave him one tablet, and the toxicology report supported this. Despite taking the painkiller, Bruce's headache worsened, so he went to bed to lie down. With Bruce apparently asleep, Raymond Chow went to meet former James Bond actor George Lazenby at a restaurant to see if he would star in their film. At 15 minutes past 8, 3 hours before Bruce's death, Betty went to wake her lover, but he did not wake. She called Raymond at the restaurant to let him know that Bruce was still asleep and said she would try again in half an hour. Around 9 o'clock, Betty tried to wake Bruce again, but still could not. She became frightened when Bruce was unresponsive and did not know what to do, so she waited for a long time before contacting anyone. Betty was so worried about the potential scandal of Bruce being found unwell at home that, instead of immediately calling an ambulance, she called Raymond. Betty explained that she did not call for help immediately because Raymond had instructed her to wait until he arrived. She also admitted to panicking, unsure of what to do. Raymond said that the situation might be similar to an incident 2 months earlier when Bruce had been in a coma but then recovered. Half an hour later, Raymond arrived at the apartment, and when he also failed to wake Bruce, they called Betty's personal physician, whom they could rely on for discretion. This man came to the apartment and found Bruce unresponsive. From Bruce's medical records, the doctor said he was in a coma and his breathing was weak, which is where they panicked and immediately called an ambulance. For the second time in 2 months, Bruce was rushed to the hospital, but this time he was taken to Queen Elizabeth Hospital, which had better facilities, rather than Baptist Hospital, where they had treated him after his previous collapse. The ambulance's departure from Betty's home immediately exposed their affair to the public and sparked a media storm. Under Raymond's direction, and reportedly at the request of Bruce's wife, Linda, Betty initially denied the origins of the ambulance and her affair with Bruce, stating that she felt she had no right to speak out. "I was 26 years old at the time, and the man adored by millions died in my bed. I became a public enemy." Afterward, rumors spread that Betty had given Bruce a stimulant or poisoned him, and Betty vehemently denied the allegations, saying she had never heard of such a drug. At 10:15, an hour before Bruce's death, he was rushed to the emergency room. Doctors struggled to resuscitate him, unwilling to accept responsibility for the death of Hong Kong's most famous man under their care in the hospital, so they treated him with extreme vigor. Adrenaline was injected directly into his heart, but it still had no effect. At 11:30 on the night of July 20th, 1973, it was announced that Bruce Lee had finally died at the age of 32. Fans wept at the news because Bruce Lee was the healthiest person they knew, incredibly athletic and fit, yet he was dead. A wild theory circulated that Bruce had actually been dead since he arrived at the hospital. In an attempt to hide the fact that Bruce had died in his mistress's apartment, it was announced that he had died in his own garden. When the truth came out, it caused a sensational media storm. Every tabloid, every newspaper, every publication in Hong Kong featured a front-page photo of Bruce Lee and Betty. The tabloids then painted Bruce as an adulterer who abused his wife with his debauched behavior. Linda clarified and defended her late husband, saying, "Having been married to Bruce for 9 years and being the mother of our 2 children, I am more than qualified to provide a true account of the facts." Despite the revelation of Bruce's affair with Betty, Linda Lee remained faithful, attending her husband's service in Hong Kong with 25,000 mourning fans. Bruce was buried 4 days later in his wife's hometown of Seattle, with film stars Steve McQueen and James Coburn serving as pallbearers. A recent report from TVB noted that advances in medical research had cast doubt on Bruce's initial cause of death. Some experts believe genetics may have played a role, as Lee's father and brother died while resting. Others suggested epilepsy, citing muscle spasms and seizures Bruce experienced in the months leading up to his death. A coroner later concluded that Bruce likely died from an accident caused by cerebral edema, possibly due to an allergic reaction to a common painkiller Betty had given him. Betty emphasized that Lee had taken the drug before, and that she and her family had also used it. "Honestly, even if the drug caused his death, what could I have done? "I didn't invent the drug. I don't understand its composition." Undeniably, Betty quickly became the center of attention and became the most hated actress of the era. She also admitted that some die-hard fans threatened to kill her. With all this moral burden, Betty suffered from schizophrenia. His son Brandon was only 8 years old, and his daughter Shannon was 4 when their father died. At the time, Brandon was traumatized by martial arts, angry, and reluctant to inherit his father's role. He was even expelled from 2 high schools before dropping out of a 3rd. He said, "I remember when I was a kid, a lot of my friends wouldn't come over because there were always people in the backyard screaming and breaking things." Brandon admitted that being Bruce Lee's son made him feel pressured to emulate his father, and he had no intention of following in his father's footsteps. His mother, Linda Lee, also admitted that Brandon struggled, saying, "It was a blessing because Bruce was such a great father, but for Brandon, living up to the expectations of others because of his father was also a burden." However, Brandon eventually became enamored with acting, and thanks to his father's martial arts training and the Lee family name, he landed his first role in the TV movie Kung Fu, the Movie. The film that catapulted him to fame, of course, was The Crow. But tragically, Brandon died on set in an accident with a prop gun. Brandon was filming a scene where his character was shot by thugs, and the actor was wearing a real revolver with plastic bullets, so that in close-up shots, the revolver would show normal-looking ammunition. Unfortunately, the gun was not properly inspected and cleaned before the blanks were fired, and when the trigger was pulled, the plastic piece shot out as if it were live, hitting Brandon in the stomach with lethal velocity. When the director said, "Cut," Brandon did not lose consciousness and died at the very young age of 28, just before he was about to become famous, just like his father. He was buried next to his father in Seattle. His mother, Linda, filed a lawsuit against the filmmakers, alleging negligence in her son's death. The lawsuit was settled 2 months later for undisclosed terms. Linda Lee received praise from the public for being a faithful wife and for calmly handling her husband's affair with Betty. Even today, Linda still maintains that her husband was a good man and a wonderful father to their 2 children. Linda wrote The Man Only I Knew, which was later adapted into the biopic Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. Linda is now 80 years old, and she left the charitable foundation, the Bruce Lee Foundation, to her daughter Shannon. Not to be outdone by Linda, his legal wife, Betty also wanted to write a book about Bruce from her perspective. After divorcing her husband, Charles Hyung, and having a daughter named Candy Hyung, Betty now devotes her time to pursuing Buddhism and helping the local Buddhist community in Hong Kong. On the 30th anniversary of her lover's death, Betty announced at a press conference her plans to write his autobiography. Betty recalled that she and Bruce had been lovers for over a year before his death. In an interview in 2013, 40 years after Bruce's death, although Betty admitted to having an intimate relationship with Lee, she said that she had not engaged in any intimate activity with him on the day of his death. Betty had written over 7,000 words for her lover, and that the author of Overseas had offered to be her co-author. The project was shelved indefinitely because Betty said it was not the right time because the book's content was complex and involved another person, Linda. 2 years later, on the 42nd anniversary of Bruce's death, Betty published The Best Time with Bruce Lee, detailing their relationship. Betty says her strong Buddhist faith has helped her overcome fear and guilt, allowing her to channel her grief into personal growth and charitable work. She is now 78 years old and says, "Beloved artists often have short lives, like Teresa Teng, Leslie Chung, Anita Mui, and Bruce Lee. People who are hated, like me, live on. It's not my will, it's not your will, it's heaven's will." She now lives with her daughter, rarely making public appearances, mostly at Buddhist events. What do you think was the real cause of Bruce Lee's death? Has the love triangle that rocked Hong Kong found a fitting end? Please let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching this video from beginning to the end. If you like this video, don't forget to click subscribe, like, comment, and share button to keep in touch with other interesting history. See you in the next video.